Hey guys, in this month's Historical Fiction 101, I'm going to be sharing with you some books that are set in the Victorian era. I do love me a good book set in the Victorian era, you guys. I am always obsessed with the Victorian era. It's just such a great time in history. Just so many interesting, unique things kind of going on during that time period. So yeah, how do you define the Victorian era, for starters? Victorian literature, or historical fiction, whatever, is anything set during the reign of Queen Victoria, essentially. And yeah, just looking up really quickly how long Queen Victoria reigned, she reigned from June 20th, 1837, until her death, January 22nd of 1901. And yeah, that's about like 64 years. She had a very incredibly long reign. So yeah, Victorian historical fiction, you have just a huge timeline there that you can explore, and it's just so fun. So yeah, I did manage to find 10 books set in the Victorian era. And yeah, this is all historical fiction. Let me remind you of that. This is not going to include like classics, obviously, because they would have been contemporary during that time period. So yeah, you're not going to see something like Dracula or Jane Eyre or Wuthering Heights or Great Expectations. All of that would have been considered, like I said, contemporary during the Victorian era. Once again, this is all historical fiction. And as I always do with these particular videos when I'm giving out recommendations, I am here looking down at my computer. I'm on Goodreads, so if you want to know any more about these particular books, go check out Goodreads. So, first up, Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. Sue Trinder is an orphan, left as an infant in the care of Mrs. Saxby, a baby farmer, who raised her with unusual tenderness, as if Sue were her own. Mrs. Saxby's household, with its fussy babies calmed with doses of gin, also hosts a transient family of petty thieves, fingersmiths, for whom this house is the heart of a mean London slum is home. One day, the most beloved thief of all arrives. Gentleman, an elegant con man who carries with him an enticing proposition for Sue. If she wins a position as the maid to Maud Lily, a naive gentlewoman, and aids Gentleman in her seduction, then they will all share in Maud's vast inheritance. Once the inheritance is secured, Maud will be disposed of, passed off as mad, and made to live out the rest of her days in a lunatic asylum. With dreams of paying back the kindness of her adopted family, Sue agrees to the plan. Once in, however, Sue begins to pity her helpless Mark and care for Maud Lily in unexpected ways. But no one and nothing is as it seems in this Dickensian novel of thrills and reversals. I hear that this is a very, very popular book by Sarah Waters. Drood by Dan Simons. On June 9th, 1865, Dickens and his mistress are secretly returning to London when their express train hurtles over a gap in a trestle. All of the first-class carriages except the one carrying Dickens are smashed to bits in the valley below. When Dickens descends into that valley to confront the dead and dying, his life will be changed forever, and at the core of that ensuing 5-year nightmare is Drood, the name that Dickens whispers to his friend Wilkie Collins. A laudanum addict and lesser novelist, Collins flouts Victorian sensibilities by living with one mistress while having a child with another, but he may be the only man on earth with whom Dickens can share the secret of Drood. Increasingly obsessed with crypts, cemeteries, and the precise length of time it would take for a corpse to dissolve in a lime pit, Dickens ceases writing for 4 years and wanders the worst slums and catacombs of London at night while staging public readings during the day, gruesome readings that will leave his audiences horrified. Finally, he begins writing what would have been the world's first great mystery masterpiece, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, only to be interrupted forever by Drood. And yeah, it says that this is based on actual biographical events and I guess the origin of the mystery of Edwin Drood. Kind of sounds like a bit of a horror novel, if you will. And Only to Deceive, and this is book 1 in the Lady Emily Ashton Mysteries series by Tasha Alexander. I have yet to start this series. I do own quite a number of the books. I'm really anxious to get into it because they are super popular. For Emily, accepting the proposal of Philip, the Viscount Ashton, was an easy way to escape her overbearing mother, who was set on a grand society match. So when Emily's dashing husband died on safari soon after their wedding, she felt little grief. After all, she barely knew him. Now, nearly 2 years later, she discovers that Philip was a far different man from the one she had married so cavalierly. His journals reveal him to have been a gentleman scholar and antiquities, I can speak you guys, collector, who to her surprise was deeply in love with his wife. Emily becomes fascinated with this new image of her dead husband, and she immerses herself in all things ancient and begins to study Greek. Emily's intellectual pursuits and her desires to learn more about Philip take her to the quiet corridors of the British Museum, one of her husband's favorite places. There, amid priceless ancient statues, she uncovers a dark, dangerous secret involving stolen artifacts from the Greco-Roman galleries. And to complicate matters, she's juggling two very prominent and wealthy suitors, one of whose intentions may go beyond the marrying kind. As she sets out to solve the crime, her search leads to more surprises about Philip and causes her to question the role in Victorian society to which she, as a woman, is relegated. A Curious Beginning, and this is book 1 in the Veronica Speedwell series by Deanna Rayborn. I have read the very first book in this series, and I have neglected to go back and continue. I need to pick the rest up. London, 1887. After burying her spinster aunt, orphaned Veronica Speedwell is free to resume her world travels in pursuit of scientific inquiry and the occasional romantic dalliance. As familiar with hunting butterflies as with fending off admirers, Veronica intends to embark upon the journey of a lifetime. But fate has other plans for when Veronica thwarts her own attempted abduction with the help of an enigmatic German baron, who offers her sanctuary in the care of his friend Stoker, a reclusive and bad-tempered natural historian. But before the Baron can reveal what he knows of the plot against her, he is found murdered, leaving Veronica and Stoker on the run from an elusive assailant as wary partners in search of the villainous truth. The House of Silk by Anthony Horowitz, and this is part of a series of books that Anthony Horowitz has written that are set within the Sherlock Holmes canon started by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. London, 1890, 221B Baker Street. A fine art dealer named Edmund Carstairs visits Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson to beg for their help. He is being menaced by a strange man in a flat cap, a wanted criminal who seems to have followed him all the way from America. In the days that follow, his home is robbed, his family is threatened, and then the first murder takes place. Almost unwillingly, Holmes and Watson find themselves being drawn ever deeper into an international conspiracy connected to the teeming criminal underworld of Boston, the gaslight streets of London, opium dens, and much, much more. And as they dig, they begin to hear the whispered phrase, the House of Silk, a mysterious entity that connects the highest levels of government to the deepest depths of criminality. Holmes begins to fear that he has uncovered a conspiracy that threatens to tear apart the very fabric of society. And I have read this book, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was pretty impressed with it. And it really felt like a part of the Holmes and Watson canon. The Yard, and this is book 1 of the Scotland Yard Murder Squad by Alex Grecian. Victorian London is a cesspool of crime, and Scotland Yard has only 12 detectives, known as the Murder Squad, to investigate countless murders every month. Created after the Metropolitan Police's spectacular failure to capture Jack the Ripper, the Murder Squad suffers rampant public contempt. They have failed their citizens, but no one can anticipate the brutal murder of one of their own, one of the 12. When Walter Day, the squad's newest hire, is assigned the case of the murdered detective, he finds a strange ally in the Yard's first forensic pathologist, Dr. Bernard Kingsley. Together they track the killer, who clearly is not finished with the Murder Squad. But why? Ooh, that sounds really good. And it says here that's kind of comparable to something like The Alienist. Ooh. Bellman in Black by Diane Setterfield. And this is a book that I do own, but I have yet to get to it, you guys. Bellman in Black is a heart-thumping, perfect ghost story, beautifully and irresistibly written. It's ratcheting tension, exquisitely calibrated line by line. Its hero is William Bellman, who, as a boy of 10, killed a shiny black rook with a catapult, and who grew up to be someone his neighbors think who could go to the good or the bad. And indeed, although William Bellman's life at first seems blessed, he has a happy marriage to a beautiful woman, becomes father to a brood of bright, strong children, and thrives in business. One by one, people around him die, and at each funeral he is startled to see a strange man in black smiling at him. At first the dead are distant relatives, but eventually his own children die, and then his wife, leaving behind only one child, his favorite, Dora. Unhinged by grief, William gets drunk and stumbles to his wife's fresh grave, and who should be there waiting but the smiling stranger in black. The stranger has a proposition for William, a mysterious business called Bellman in Black. Ooh. The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. I have yet to read this book. I don't own it. I think I might though, because I know it's going to be turned into a mini series with Tom Hiddleston. Do I got that right? This follows Cora Seaborn and Will Ransom. Cora is a well-to-do London widow who moves to the Essex parish of Aldwinter, and Will is the local vicar. They meet as their village is engulfed by rumors that the mythical Essex serpent, once said to roam the marshes claiming human lives, has returned. Cora, a keen amateur naturalist, is enthralled, convinced the beast may be a real undiscovered species. But Will sees his parishioners' agitation as a moral panic, a deviation from true faith. Although they can agree on absolutely nothing, as the seasons turn around them in this quiet corner of England, they find themselves inexorably drawn together and torn apart. Ooh, that sounds good. Victoria by Daisy Goodwin. I have read this, and this is pretty much a companion piece to the Victoria TV series. In 1837, less than a month after her 18th birthday, Alexandrina Victoria, sheltered, small in stature, and female, becomes Queen of Great Britain and Ireland. Many thought it was preposterous. Alexandrina, to her family, had always been tightly controlled by her mother and her household, and was surely too unprepossessing to hold the throne. Yet from the moment William IV died, the young queen startled everyone, abandoning her hated first name in favor of Victoria, insisting for the first time in her life on sleeping in a room apart from her mother, resolute about meeting with her ministers alone. One of those ministers, Lord Melbourne, became Victoria's private secretary. Perhaps he might have become more than that, except everyone argued that she was destined to marry her cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. But Victoria had met Albert as a child and found him stiff and critical, surely the last man she would want for a husband. Oh, yeah. And yeah, if you love the Victoria TV series, you're pretty much going to like this book as well, because I did. And last, Alice I Have Been by Melanie Benjamin. I have read this book, and it was surprisingly very, very good. I really, really like this. Alice Little Hargreaves' life has been a richly woven tapestry. As a young woman, wife, mother, and widow, she's experienced intense passion, great privilege, and greater tragedy. But as she nears her 81st birthday, she knows that to the world around her, she is and will always be only Alice. Her life was permanently dog-eared. At one fateful moment in her 10th year, the golden summer days, she urged a grown-up friend to write down one of his fanciful stories. That story, a wild tale of rabbits, queens, and a precocious young child, becomes a sensation the world over. Its author, a shy, stuttering Oxford professor, does more than immortalize Alice. He changes her life forever. But even he cannot stop time, as much as he might like to, and as Alice's childhood slips away, a peacetime of glittering balls and royal romances gives way to the urgent tide of war. For Alice, the stakes could not be higher, for she is the mother of 3 grown sons, soldiers all. Yet even as she stands to lose everything she treasures, one part of her will always be the determined, undaunted Alice of the story, who discovered that life beyond the rabbit hole was an astonishing journey. And yeah, I really like that, because it was a nice look at how the story of Alice in Wonderland came to be. And it's very, very interesting. So you guys, that is it for my recommendations for all things set within the Victorian era. Like I said, I freaking love the Victorian era. If I'm looking at a book jacket and it says something about sets in Victorian London, I'm like, okay, bye. I'm going to purchase it. So guys, what other books out there do you recommend I check out set during the Victorian era, so I can go check them out myself? So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.